The committee will come to order. Welcome to the fiscal year 2022 Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies Markup. I'm pleased to be joined here today by Congressman David Joyce, the ranking member. I also want to welcome full committee chair, Ms. DeLauro, and all of the subcommittee members. Unfortunately, Ms. Granger, our full committee ranking member, has flight delays, but hopefully she can join us a bit later. Before I move to my opening statement, I'd like to offer a brief explanation of how this markup will work. Today's room has been configured to maintain the recommended 6-foot social distancing between members, staff, and the press corps in the room. We have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups, including documents to be inserted in the record by unanimous consent, amendments, motions, and other unanimous consent requests, and so on. That email address has been provided to your staff. I would remind all members that they must verbally request unanimous consent out loud, separately from sending the document or written UC request to the email address. Now, I would like to move to my opening statement. For fiscal year 2022, the subcommittee is recommending a total of $43.4 billion for the Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies bill. This is an increase of $7.3 billion over last year's enacted level, which is a 20% increase. I'm proud that this bill makes long overdue investments to care for our planet, fight the climate emergency, and meet our trust obligations to tribal nations. The bill prioritizes the protection and preservation of our landscapes and biodiversity, providing $15.6 billion for the Department of Interior. It supports the administration's initiatives on climate change, such as the Civilian Climate Corps, and affirms the role of science as the foundation for decision-making by providing an increase of $327 million for the U.S. Geological Survey. It funds a national initiative to reclaim abandoned mines and cap orphan oil and gas wells, and it makes investments in renewable energy development, including offshore wind. Climate change is causing more extreme weather events and drought conditions, as well as worsening existing problems such as the spread of invasive species. These factors are all contributing to an increasing threat of high-intensity wildfires in the West. The Interior bill not only provides $5.7 billion for wildfire fire management, but also invests in programs to improve the health of our forests and make them more resilient. This includes $98 million for vegetation and watershed management, $59 million for forest health management, and $60 million for the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Fund. The bill provides a total of $8.3 billion for the Forest Service. The bill also includes major investments to clean up pollution and protect human health and the environment. The bill provides $11.4 billion for the Environmental Protection Agency, the highest funding level in the agency's history. Across the country, Superfund cleanups are delayed because of lack of funding. This bill boosts Superfund spending by $328 million, a 27% increase, and it will accelerate the pace of cleanup of toxic chemicals from the country's most contaminated sites. The bill adopts a whole-of-government approach to address environmental justice and invests an unprecedented $248 million in these efforts. Additionally, the bill provides $4 billion for grant programs to make drinking water and sewer system improvements, remove lead from our taps, improve air quality, and strengthen our nation's recycling infrastructure. These grants have profound impacts on public health and environment, but they are also economic drivers that can create good-paying American jobs. Following our work in the CARES and American Recovery Plan Acts, this bill supports the arts and humanities by providing $201 million for both the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. The cultural sector has been particularly devastated by COVID-19, and this funding will help to support relief and recovery for community organizations across the country. And finally, this bill supports Native American families by investing in a strong and resilient Indian country, including through education and healthcare programs. Within the Department of the Interior, the bill invests $4 billion in Indian affairs programs, including an additional $180 million to address climate change impacts. For Indian Health Services, the bill provides an additional $1.9 billion towards meeting federal treaty and trust obligations for healthcare. The investments in this bill will improve the lives of Americans and I urge my colleagues to support this bill. Before I turn to my colleague, the ranking member from Ohio, for any opening remarks he would like to make, I want to thank Rita Culp, our chair, Jocelyn Hahn, Janet Erickson, Kusai Merchant, Tyler Coe, Marcel Caldwell, and also on my own staff, Evan Johnston, Lisa Pale, and Katie Berg, for all of the hard work they've put into making this bill possible. Mr. Joyce.
Thank you for yielding, Madam Chair, and let me be the first to congratulate you on presenting your first Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill. I appreciate the hard work that it has taken to get this important step in fiscal year 2022 process. Despite this year's added challenges due to the pandemic and compressed budget schedule, I want to thank you for the way you've been leading the subcommittee as chair. You've continued Interior's tradition of congeniality, and the bill before us today reflects our commitment to collaboration. The bill supports programs that will help conserve our nation's most critical natural, cultural, and environmental resources and increase the federal commitment to honor our treaties and trust responsibilities to American Indians and Alaska Natives. And I'm grateful that you and your staff have made a genuine effort to accommodate requests and projects from members on both sides of the aisle. Not only does the bill before us today fully fund payments in lieu of taxes, it also provides funding to address our nation's aging water infrastructure, remediate Superfund sites to spur economic growth, and support our national parks. I'm also pleased to see that the bill continues to make critical investments in Indian country, a long-standing bipartisan priority of this subcommittee. There's $12.1 billion, a 24% increase over last year, for Indian Affairs and the Indian Health Service to support healthcare, education, law enforcement, and operational programs throughout Indian country. The bill also includes critical funding for the Department of Interior and the U.S. Forest Service wildfire suppression, hazardous fuels, and burned area rehabilitation activities. These funds are essential for protecting and restoring our communities across the country and for reducing the severity of future catastrophic wildfires. And finally, for my home district in Ohio, I'm especially grateful that the bill provides increased funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. Over the past several years, Ms. McCollum, Ms. Capter, and I have worked with our colleagues on this subcommittee and members from the Great Lakes Basin to ensure that the Great Lakes can be restored and protected for future generations. As the largest freshwater system in the world, robust funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is critical as we consider federal, state, local, and nonprofit efforts to delist area of concerns, improve water quality, prevent harmful algal blooms, and control invasive species. Also, I was pleased to see language is included to address shoreline erosion and emerging threats to communities along Lake Erie. Unfortunately, while I'm supportive of many of the bipartisan components of the bill, I'm unable to support the bill at this time. This is because the elimination of long-standing provisions already agreed to, and in addition of new controversial policy riders and proposed level of spending in the absence of an overarching budget plan. Among the long-standing provisions dropped from this bill are two provisions preventing the EPA from regulating greenhouse gas emissions from livestock operations. Democrats have agreed to continue these annual provisions over the past several years, long before livestock became a target of the Green New Deal. And although this president has signaled he has no intent to target livestock, it makes no sense for Congress to signal any openness to the idea by dropping these riders. I agree that mitigating the impacts of climate change should be a national priority, and the United States must continue to lead in this area. But we will not succeed by forcing top-down draconian changes on the American people. We must instead pursue realistic free market and innovative solutions to climate change that protect the interests of the American people, our communities, and our country's economic well-being. For that reason, I'm deeply concerned about the addition of several new controversial riders that would weaken U.S. energy and mineral security by limiting development of these and other natural resources. We cannot lock America out of the domestic energy and minerals it needs for a smooth transition to a cleaner energy future. And in the meantime, let's not forget about that our economy continues to depend on an all-of-the-above energy strategy. These added provisions would undermine our ability to meet this demand. Similar riders were dropped from the final conference agreement last year, and the same must be done again before this bill can be signed into law this year. A final area of concern is the funding level proposed in this bill. The bill before us today proposes a $7 billion increase in discretionary spending, with many agencies receiving double-digit % increases. And much of the success of spending is provided for in the President's new agenda, which is not yet fully vetted or authorized. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, Congress has provided trillions of dollars in economic stimulus and relief to help Americans tackle unique challenges. On the heels of this unprecedented spending, as we continue to restore our way of life and reignite our economy, it is imperative that the federal government makes the tough choices necessary to live within its means. We must return to the practice of evaluating and funding programs based on their needs and performance so that we do not saddle future generations with even more economic burden than what already awaits them. Despite these concerns, I would like to thank Chair Pingree for the work she has done on so many bipartisan aspects of this bill, and I want to thank the staff for their tireless efforts to put the bill together in such a short amount of time. I'm confident as Federal Year 22 process moves forward, we will continue working together with our colleagues on the subcommittee to find common ground, address controversial policy riders, and reach a bipartisan agreement on spending. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joyce. Thank you very much, Mr. Joyce. I would now like to yield to Congresswoman DeLauro, Chair of the full committee, for her remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I want to congratulate you and Ranking Member Joyce for your work on this bill. The Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies Subcommittee has a broad mandate from managing and preserving America's natural resources and cultural heritage, protecting our environment, and upholding our treaty and trust responsibilities to Native Americans. And I know your dedication to these important issues and your commitment to this committee, to the House itself, and the people we represent. I thank you and I thank the staff for your hard work on the bill that is before us. For far too long, the deck has been stacked towards big corporations and special interests, including those who pollute our air and water and defile our land, at the expense of working families and the environment itself. This has led not just to toxic air and dirty rivers, but to the emissions that have made climate change a global crisis. However, the climate crisis is also an opportunity to build back from the devastation of the pandemic with a green economy that creates good-paying American jobs and leaves no one behind. I am pleased that this bill takes many important steps to do so. This bill brings an increased focus on offshore wind and other clean energy sources by investing $46 million in renewable energy development to grow opportunity in regions of the country that have been too often left behind. The bill provides $213 million for a national initiative to reclaim abandoned mines and cap orphan oil and gas wells. And the Civilian Climate Corps will make a tremendous difference as we implement projects to reduce emissions. I might add that I'm especially grateful that this bill includes funding for the Long Island Sound Project, which, as you know, is near and dear to my heart, which will receive $40 million, a $9.6 million increase over last year. This funding will be critical to helping to preserve this regional and national treasure. Furthermore, as we build a clean economy, we must ensure that the environmental laws on the books are enforced and that polluters are made to pay for the damage they cause. That is why I am very pleased that this legislation provides $599 million, a $70 million increase for the Environmental Protection Agency's environmental enforcement efforts. And this bill's focus on environmental justice dramatically expands efforts to address pollution in communities of color. As we enforce our environmental laws, we must also live up to the treaty and trust obligations our country has made to Native Americans. This legislation honors the federal government's responsibility to Native Americans. It invests in a strong and resilient Indian country with $12.45 billion to support Native American families, including education and health programs. With these crucial investments, we can turn crisis into opportunity. We can keep the air we breathe and the water we drink safe and clean for those who come after us. We can confront the climate crisis while creating good-paying jobs and growing opportunity. Once again, I thank Chair Pingree and Ranking Member Joyce for their work on this bill, and I urge your support. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Are there any other members who wish to make remarks? Are there any amendments? Ms. McCollum, the Vice Chair of the Subcommittee, is recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I move that the bill be favorably reported to the full committee.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. I ask unanimous consent that staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the measure just approved. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.